You're listening to a podcast appearing on the Two Guys Talking Podcast Network.
This is the weekly Firecast, episode 10, interview with Dr. BBQ, Ray Lampe.
Strap yourselves in. It's time for the weekly Firecast. This is the podcast for all foodies, those who love food that is cooked over a fire or feels like fire in your mouth. You love spice, smoke, sauce, and all things savory, this is the show for you. Now, here's your host, chilehead and barbecuer, Scott Roberts.
I'm Scott Roberts, your companion for the next hour or so as I guide you through all things fiery, spicy, and barbecue. I have a big show in store for you today, so I'm going to try and get through these first few notes rather quickly. I wanted to mention real fast, thanks for all the feedback that everyone's been providing so far. It's always valuable. I'd like to invite everyone else who hasn't provided feedback yet to go ahead and do so. Listen to some of the past episodes, listen to this episode, and tell me what you like about it. Tell me what you hate. And this very podcast and all the other podcasts on the Two Guys Talking Podcast Network, we have the $100 feedback gauntlet. If you give any type of real feedback about any of the podcast episodes, you'll be put in the running to win $100 cash. So if you do that, you go to the numeral 2guystalking.com/Firecast. Go to the contact form on the left-hand side of the page. Just provide just a little information, what you thought was good, bad about the show. Send it off. Not only will it make a better overall show for you to listen to for future episodes, but again, you could win some really quick cash. Simple, easy. So I invite everyone to do that. And for those of you who do not know, I'm not only into hot sauces and chili peppers, but I'm into the TV show Dexter on Showtime as well. You can join co-host Mike Wilkerson and I as we cover Season 7 of Dexter right now. Just go to twoguystalking.com/DexterPodcast.html. Just go to twoguystalking.com. Click on the Dexter link, and if you're a Dexter fan as well, we will cover the show episode by episode, and we'll give you our honest opinion on the show, both a negative and positive. And so far this season, Dexter has been really good. Again, if you're into Dexter, go ahead and jump over to the website, give that a listen. I'm sure you'll like it. And then kind of jumping back to this, the weekly Firecast, there has been a lot of activity going on. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't catch hot sauce collector, my good friend Vic Klinko. He was on the Cooking Channel a couple weeks ago showing off his extensive hot sauce collection with his wife, Wendy. Now, back in episode 7, I had an extensive interview with him talking about his massive collection, which is at over 5,000 bottles right now. And I also talk about what he looks for in a hot sauce, his favorite flavor profiles, some of his favorite sauces to go with particular dishes. And you could go back and listen to that or any of the other previous weekly Firecast episodes at weeklyfirecast.com or, again, twoguystalking.com/weeklyfirecast. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? It's very simple. There is an iTunes subscription link, an RSS feed link. If you don't happen to use iTunes, just click on that, click on subscribe, copy the link into your favorite podcast catcher, and you'll have the episodes downloaded instantly every week. Now, I'm very happy and very thrilled to talk to my featured guest interview. There's not very many of you who don't know Ray Lampe, Dr. BBQ. His resume is extensive. I'm not going to go through and mention everything about him. I can just kind of give you a quick overview. He was a contestant on the Food Network Chopped Grill Masters. As a matter of fact, he's been on a couple different Food Network shows. The Best Thing I Ever Ate, Tailgate Warriors with Guy Fieri. He's a spokes chef for The Big Green Egg. He's written 6 different cookbooks, including the NFL Game Day cookbook and the most recent one, Slow Fire, which shows newbies how to cook ribs, chops, steaks, you name it. In addition to the Food Network, he's been on the E! Entertainment News, HETV, the NFL Network, Discovery Channel, CNN, Howard Stern Show. He's been in a number of magazines and periodicals, People Magazine, USA Today, Wall Street Journal, Chili Pepper Magazine, on and on and on. And, of course, he's more than just an empty figurehead. This guy knows barbecue, he loves barbecue, and he is the real deal. So right after the review of the week, I will have an extensive interview for him. Just stick around. We'll get to him in a few minutes.
And now, the review of the week.
This time out, I have a pair of sauces from the Evil Seed Sauce Company. I have their Hell Peach hot sauce and their signature hot sauce. These condiments are the brainchild of Patrick McGill. He lives in the Jacksonville, Florida area, and he sent these sauces for me to try earlier this year. Met him at the Peppers at the Beach event in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware back in May. Really nice guy, so I'm finally getting around to giving a formal review on these. Now the first one, Hell Peach, is kind of an eclectic blend of sweetness and tartness. Some of the ingredients are peaches, water, vinegar, brown sugar, serrano peppers, orange habaneros, agave syrup, garlic, and the consistency is a kind of a medium thin sauce. My opinion, it could be thickened up a little bit for my taste, but that's kind of being nitpicky. It's kind of a dark, murky, yellowish, almost orange color. But my opinion, it's pretty unique for a peach-flavored sauce. Now, the initial flavor I get is reminiscent of the actual sugary syrup you get whenever you eat canned peaches. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It just, I get more of that kind of flavor than, I guess, the actual flesh of the peach fruit. But it's a very sweet, very fruity, a pretty good tasting sauce. You get a lot of the tartness on the back end, a little hint of vinegar, and there's a little substantial medium level heat on the back end. And the more you eat of it, the more the heat kind of builds up. It's definitely not an overpowering burn. And to me, this is something that I guess fair weather chili heads might be able to tolerate sometimes if it's used in small amounts. Now, what I think this is good for, of course, white meat, seafood. Get some chicken, some salmon, tilapia, shrimp. It's good as a marinade and is kind of a topper afterwards. And I'd also use it in an application like mixing it with cream cheese for a dip with crackers. Now, it's not the best tasting fruit-flavored hot sauce I've ever had, but it's definitely something I would recommend. The heat level on a scale of 1 to 5 is probably around a 2, but the flavor on a scale of 1 to 5, I would give it a solid 3, enough to kind of push it over into positive territory. Now, the second of the sauces is the Evil Seed Signature Hot Sauce, and this is very unique because I don't think I've ever seen a sauce this color. It is basically pure black. Of course, this comes from the food coloring in it. So that in itself kind of makes it a unique sauce. A few of the ingredients in this, the main ones, water, lemon juice, jalapeno peppers, apple cider vinegar, distilled vinegar, red habanero peppers, agave syrup, garlic, onions, and of course the black food coloring. The consistency of this, it just like the Hell Peach, is kind of on the runny side, a medium thick kind of viscosity as it comes out of the bottle. Flavor-wise, it is extremely sour and tart. And not necessarily because of the vinegar, you might be thinking. It's definitely different than like a Louisiana-style hot sauce like Tabasco, which is, of course, primarily vinegar with a little bit of salt. This is more of a kind of a citrusy type sourness. I'm not a fan of that kind of flavor profile. So when I first tasted this by itself, I wasn't really that big of a fan of it. Then I added it to a few foods, to a steak, grilled chicken breast, added it to burritos. It kind of fared a little better in applications like that, adding a little bit of a heat and kind of a citrusy flavor as it melded and kind of melted into the food, blended in. It did a little bit better. Now, heat level, again, it's not very hot. I would put it on par with the Hell Peach, probably about a 2 on a scale of 1 to 5 on the heat level. Flavor profile, I'm not exactly sold all the way on it. It can use a lot of improvement, but it's not a bad tasting sauce either. So this one, I'm going to have to give a 2.5 out of 5. You may like this particular sauce. You may like the kind of a sour, acidic flavor from it. Again, I'm not a big fan of that, but in a pinch, this would be something I would use and probably enjoy with foods. But this would not be the first thing I would reach for. It's certainly not as bad as a novelty sauce would be, but you may want to pick up a bottle for yourself and just try it out and see what you think of it personally. Or that, or just pick up a bottle just to add to your hot sauce collection to kind of show it off, because it is, like I said, a pure black colored hot sauce. So out of the two, I would recommend the Hell Peach. And they come in the standard 5-ounce woozy bottles, and they are available at evilseedsauces.com. Or you can just go to weeklyfirecast.com or twoguystalking.com/firecast and click the link in the show notes.
And now, the Fire Talkers interview.
And now, here is my interview with Dr. Barbecue himself, Ray Lampe. I'm speaking with none other than Dr. Barbecue, Ray Lampe. How's everything going, Ray?
I'm good, Scott. Good to hear you.
We could talk about all kinds of things today. Let's start off with the American Royal, which happened a few weeks ago. So you went out there. How are things out there?
Oh, man, I love to talk about the American Royal, and I love to go there. My first one was 1995, but frankly, I think this was the 35th one, so I'm kind of even a new guy around there. It's the world's largest barbecue cook-off, the World Series of Barbecue, whatever. It's got a bunch of names, a bunch of history. It's an amazing thing. It's 545 teams for the open contest, which is judged on Sunday. But the Invitational was, I think, around 150 now, which is amazing. The first time I went, there was like 30 teams in the Invitational.
Mm-hmm.
But what I think about the Invitational is what I cooked this year, because I really couldn't do both, so I did the Invitational because I had qualified last year in California, actually with Tex Wasabi's All-Stars, which is one of Guy's restaurants. It's a long story, but that's why I got to cook the Invitational. But see, the difference about this Invitational is there's room for everybody. If you've won a reasonably large contest with a reasonably reputable organization in the last year, you are invited, and there's room for you. You know, Jack Daniels, everybody loves Jack Daniels, the legacy, the history, the coolness of where you go to have it. But the truth is, half the teams that qualify don't get to go, and that's a shame, because it just changes it. It's really not, in my opinion, the most important contest. American Royal Invitational is. If you're not there, you just chose not to come, well, then you can't complain. And so I think it's just the greatest contest. But then there's all this history that goes along with it. It's actually a 100-plus-year-old livestock show all month, and the barbecue is just an added-on event 35 years ago, and I could just talk about it forever. And now they've taken on Mike Tucker up in Iowa, Hawkeye's BBQ, started an online barbecue hall of fame, probably 5 years ago. And Mike nurtured this online with help from Ray Basso, with the hope of somebody grabbing it and taking it to the next level. Well, that has happened. The American Royal called Mike and said, hey, we'd like to do that. And they plan to have a building in the near future nearby with a whole real thing, like a real barbecue hall of fame, and it's so good to see. And the American Royal are the right people to do it. I've always been worried about that it would become a Kansas City thing or a Texas thing or a Charlotte thing, and it would not be not be a real barbecue hall of fame. But they have made steps to try to make it that real thing. They inducted Guy Fieri this year, Johnny Trigg, and Henry Ford, of all people. I'm sure you know the story. Henry Ford's brother-in-law invented charcoal, and Henry took it to the market, and
mm-hmm.
It's a whole thing. But anyway, that's a guy from Michigan, a guy from Texas, and a guy from California, and that's what I like to see. So sorry to get off on that, but I just thought the Hall of Fame thing, but that's just the American Royal. They got so much going on. I just love going there, seeing old friends and new ones, and people come there for the first time, and oh man, I just couldn't be happier. The results this year weren't that good, but I sure had a good time.
It's always a good time, especially when you go to the open night. I mean, it just, like you said, there are over 500 teams. It just, I don't want to call it a circus, but just so much energy, just so much partying, just so much going on.
Yeah, well, they've changed the schedule. Traditionally, it was the invitational judging was on Friday afternoon, and the open judging was on Saturday afternoon, and the main party was on Friday night. So it was fun that way, but gosh, these guys would have to try to cook after having these huge parties. I mean, they have an award for Party of the Year, and there are teams that aggressively try to win that, and it's insane. We call it the dark side on Friday night, the one whole side of it. But they've adjusted it now, so actually those guys, it was kind of funny because I was cooking in the middle of the dark side this year because of a corporate partnership, and the party is insane on Friday night, and then those guys don't have to actually cook till Saturday night. So Saturday morning, it was like a carnage, just empty beer cans and bottles everywhere. Everybody just walked away. It was like the last guy finished his beer, set it down, and they just walked away and came back Saturday, cleaned up, and then cooked the contest. So it's probably a little bit better schedule, but it's something to see. There is a throwdown party on Friday night.
Definitely. How many times have you actually competed in either the invitational or the open parts of it?
Well, like I said, 95 was the first one, so this would have been my 18th year there, but I think I missed twice. When I moved down to Florida, it's a long ride from Florida, so I probably competed 16 times. The invitational, probably half of that, probably 8 or 10 invitationals and probably 16 opens.
Yeah. Speaking of big events, you are the spokesperson for the Big Green Egg, and as of the time of this recording, the Eggstoberfest is coming up. What are the details on that?
Yeah, I actually just got a pair of green New Balance shoes showed up in the mail yesterday that I had ordered. I'm in the process. I'm doing laundry today and washing all my green egg shirts and everything. We are ready. Sandy's going to get a manicure and get some green nails put on, and it's a big deal in the world of big green eggs, and it's a blast. They started out at I think the first one was at the store in Tucker, Georgia, and then it moved over to a restaurant down the street, and now it went back to our big facility. Now it's in Atlanta Motor Speedway. There'll be like 3,000 people there, and probably 200 eggs getting cooked on, and people just cooking and having a few beers and sharing the food they're cooking, and other people just wanting to learn. Oh, it's what an event! Chris Capel from Dizzy Pig and I are going to do a couple of cooking demos. Actually, J. Todd Tucker, who's a professional bass fisherman that Green Egg sponsors, is going to cook a stuffed flank steak with me. So we'll see what his chops are like. I think he's a pretty good cook. That's the kind of thing it is. Oh, it's just a blast. People just cooking food everywhere, and you've never seen anything like it. It's kind of like what I envisioned. They used to have, like Rambler used to have, people would all come back to the factory, and I think Saturn used to do it, and Airstream trailers. They have these big festivals. That's what it is. It's like they call it coming back to the mothership. Mm-hmm. And oh God, it's a good time. I'll be there in a couple of days. Like you said, it's going to air afterwards, so I can't fill you in, but I know what it's going to be like. I know it's going to be a whole bunch of people having a great time.
Yeah, but people come back to the mother egg, so to speak.
That's it. I mean, and it's just got that vibe all the way around. We got a new president a couple years ago for Big Green Egg, and for me personally, I wasn't worried if he knew how to run a business. I assumed he did, but my personal thoughts when I met him were, does he get it, what this is, and how unique of a situation? And he does. He certainly does. He's part of it now. He understands it totally, and it's really a blast. It's fun to be part of. He created, I don't know what they call it, Mr. Egghead or something. Eggs like 15 feet high. And once he started to understand the culture, he didn't think that was big enough. So he decided the thing's like 25 feet high. It's a big green egg with arms and legs. And oh my gosh, it's just a blast to be part of it. As a businessman, you dream of being involved with a product like this because it's just so much fun.
Exactly. There's a lot I can go over as far as your involvement and your appearances and everything. I want to go back, I guess, to the beginning of your involvement with barbecue. How did you get started out?
It's a weird story. I really like to cook. I grew up in Chicago. Chicago is not really a great barbecue town. It's becoming one, just like every place else. Everybody can buy a Southern Pride and learn how to cook barbecue, and there's a lot of info, and there's a lot of good barbecue being served around all over the place. But Chicago really wasn't that. In the black communities where the folks had migrated up from Mississippi and Alabama, there was real barbecue, but Chicago was more of a steak and potatoes kind of a town. But I always liked to cook. In high school, I signed up for a cooking class, and it was the 70s. I thought there'd be some girls in that class, and it would be kind of easy, and it was. And it was a cooking class for girls back then. It wasn't really a culinary program. I just was at a culinary program in Tarpon Springs, Florida. A friend of mine's an instructor there, and I went up and seen him. And it's this is like a professional kitchen. The kids are all in chef clothes, and this is really a career path for them. It wasn't. I took it. It was just girls learning how to cook for their family. I think the old lady teaching the class, Miss Perkins, I always joked that I think she'd be really surprised how this all turned out, because I don't think she thought that I was a serious culinarian at the time. We were just goofing around. It was the 70s. But I really liked to cook. I learned how to cook. I remember a crab quiche there, and I think apple pie, and I remember some blueberry muffins. I don't really, it wasn't something I thought about at the time. But I always liked to cook, and I continued to cook after that. As a young man in my 20s, I always joked that I either needed to get married or learn how to cook, so I learned how to cook. And then along came a barbecue contest, 1982. So I guess I was 25. A buddy of mine signed us up for the Mike Royko Rib Fest in Chicago. This has become legendary because there's a lot of Chicago guys that started there 30 years ago now. Just saw Dave Raymond from Sweet Baby Ray's has become a friend, and his career started there as well. And he knew the date. It was September 18th or 19th or something. He wasn't sure about it, but he knew it was right around then. Good enough for me. But that's where it started. A buddy of mine signed us up, and I didn't really know how to cook barbecue, but I knew how to cook a lot of other stuff. So I sort of took my time and figured out how to cook some ribs and got a barbecue sauce recipe and went to this thing. But I understood. I learned that about barbecue. I kind of took it on now, and then the following year I wanted to go back to this thing. So I had a buddy of mine build me a grill out of a drum, and had, it progressed from there. And then in 1991, after this thing, they finally ended it. They went on for 10 years. I saw a little thing in the paper, the first KCBS contest in Illinois, and I didn't know anything about that, but sounded good to me, so I signed up and I went. And I didn't know you were supposed to cook all 4 categories. At the time, the category was poultry, and I had been cooking this turkey on my grill that I injected with sherry and butter. I learned that from Frugal Gourmet. I saw him do it. He wasn't cooking it on the grill, but I thought, well, that'll convert well to the grill. So I went to the cook-off, and I cooked that turkey on my grill and came in 3rd place. And that was the awakening to me. I mean, as much as I enjoyed the Rib Fest, it was really a bunch of guys in the field partying and drinking some beer and cooking with fire. Heck, it was fun. But the first KCBS contest was like a awakening to me. These guys stayed up all night and they cooked briskets and pork shoulders and ribs and chicken. I mean, I was the piker there. I didn't know what to expect, and some of these guys did. There were a few guys that had been doing it for a while, and it was just looked so good to me. I often joke that if they had a chicken soup cooking contest where everybody stayed up all night and drank beer, I might be a chicken soup expert. But barbecue just, it just fit in what I like to do in many ways, and that's from then on. Then I was hooked. By '93, I had a new van, and I had, like I've seen with so many guys, my friends just weren't as into it as I was. So I bought a van and got a cooker that I could hang on the back of my van and tow it around, and started buying all the right equipment and driving around. And in '94, I think it was, I won my first contest in Michigan, my first barbecue contest, and that was pretty much the end of it. I was hooked after that and never to turn back.
And that's why I've never gotten in the competition barbecue. I don't want to be hooked. I feel compelled to go out, 30 weekends out of the year.
Well, we never used to cook that much either, though. It's evolved so much. I don't think, maybe I cooked 20 one year, but I think it was 18 or 19. But now these guys cook 30, 40. I mean, everybody cooks 30 or 40 every year. It's a serious commitment, and they're so into it. It's amazing to me to go, and I still cook once in a while, but the equipment has grown up so much. It's just unbelievable what these guys bring. The new thing I saw was everybody's got Yeti coolers now, those big $400 coolers, which are really nice, but man, I don't need one of those to keep my pork butts cold. It's evolved so far what these guys do and bring to the cook-off, and working. They work so hard at it. It's amazing to me what it's become. I don't know. I don't know that I would have stayed with it if I had to work as hard as these guys do now. We were really having some fun. Everybody was down on the ground with an easy up, just kind of talking to each other while we cooked. Now everybody hides in their motorhome, and I mean they're technicians. They're really, it's amazing the effort that's put into the perfect rib or the perfect chicken thigh. I'm kind of lazy. Like you sit around and drink some beer. These guys work hard.
It's almost comparing to how NFL players and football used to operate 30, 40 years ago compared to how it is now. Now you have multi-million-dollar salaries and, team doctors, et cetera, et cetera. They're just so much into it now.
Yeah. I used to go to Comiskey Park a lot. I was a White Sox fan, and across the street was a bar called McCuddy's. And I mean, this is probably in the 70s, and Mrs. McCuddy was still there. She had been the granddaughter, or the daughter when Babe Ruth played, and there were stories about him. He would sneak over and have a hot dog and a beer during the game, and come and get drunk, sleep on the bar afterwards. And I think of that. I think we used to just show up and drink a bunch of beer and see who could cook the best barbecue. Now, and in his day, it was who could live that normal life and still be the guy that hit the most homers. Now these guys work. It's like the working out thing almost. It's amazing what they do.
Well, going from competition just to, I guess, notoriety in the whole barbecue world, at what point did people kind of look to you as an expert or an authority, and when did things really start snowballing for you when it came to making TV magazine appearances?
Well, we can't leave out the whole middle part of this where, everything else I'm talking about previously was fun. It was a hobby. I had a successful trucking business in Chicago, and this was really my hobby. And as we got to about 1998, 99, I saw what was on the table. Trucking was changing, and it was not going to be there. I needed to start thinking about a new career path, and I was in my 40s. I couldn't retire, that's for sure. I just needed to do something different. And the only other thing I really knew how to do was cook barbecue. So I made this rash decision to sell at a home. I had a little lake home in Wisconsin, and sell all of that, close the trucking business down, and move to Florida and sell barbecue in the parking lot. I mean, it sounded insane to my friends. I grew up in a very normal environment in Chicago. Everybody had a regular job. We moved out to the suburbs, eventually, and it was very normal. And all of a sudden, I was making this rash decision. But I knew better. The trucking business was gone. It wasn't going to come back. And it was going to have to take a huge pay cut or start a new career. And this was the only other thing I knew how to do. But truthfully, it was 2000. I moved to Florida. I really believed I was just going to sell barbecue in the parking lot. I bought a nice trailer that I could get licensed, and I was going to sell barbecue in the parking lot and then take off for 4 or 5 months and go travel the country cooking in contests. That was sort of my goal. I was done. I was dropping out. Mm-hmm. I didn't wear long pants for almost 2 years and wore flip-flops just about every day. I was done, Well, but it wasn't working financially. I knew I had to do something different, and I didn't really know what else to do at that point. But what I saw was happening was barbecue was becoming popular. It was really starting to change, and I was the guy who had won a bunch of contests and done some good stuff, and I was real active on the internet. So I thought, well, I'll start throwing myself out there as a class to teach some classes. And really, I believe I was the second guy in to do any of these competition classes. The first one was Paul Kirk, and Paul wasn't really winning anymore when he was doing them. I was winning. I was actively one of the best cooks around, and I was doing the classes. And I tell you, it's a laundry list of champions that came to those classes. They were new guys, and they wanted to get started, and I was just cutting to the chase and showing them how to use Fab B and showing them how to butterfly a pork butt and stuff like that. And Blues Hog, when it first came around, I was on that one, and I helped a lot of guys get started. It was kind of fun. So that was working out for me. And then I started trying to push my way into the grill industry. I had a friend down here in Florida that was involved in that industry, and I thought, well, maybe I need to do some of that. And he got me a gig working a couple of trade shows with Napoleon Grills, the gas grill guys out of Canada, really nice folks. But it just was a tough fit because it was a gas grill, and I was Dr. Barbecue trying to cook a barbecue contest. It just didn't work. But I met the Big Green Egg guys at one of them shows, and we just kind of hit it off. And now that thing, I thought, well, I could actually use this at the contest and use it at home and be their spokesman. So I kind of created the job, and we were talking about it, and they gave me an egg. And then I went to a contest in Kentucky, and I said, well, bring 4 eggs, and I'll cook the whole thing on the eggs. The best of my knowledge, this is the first contest anybody ever cooked on all eggs. Mm-hmm. And I won. It was a legit contest. Trig was there, and a bunch of the guys from Tennessee and stuff. I mean, they were all my friends. I could beat these guys on any day, but not with those goofy egg things, So it got everybody's attention. Hang on 1 second. I had to slide to the back of my office and get the baseball bat that was the grand champion trophy that day. It was 2003. Barbecue cook-off, South Oldham Lions and Tourist Convention Bureau, something like that. But it's a Louisville Slugger that was the grand champion trophy.
The full-size baseball bat?
Yeah, regular old baseball
Very
bat.
Cool.
From there right outside of Louisville in Crestwood, I think was the name of the town. And that's how I know what date it was. So it was 2003. And so the dealer came and they sold like 11 eggs that day because nobody really had seen much of these things. And all of a sudden there I was cooking on them and winning the contest. And then Green Egg said, well, I said, well, I'm qualified now for the Jack Daniels. If you want me to cook on all eggs, you got to kind of get, we got to get working together. And they said, okay, that sounds good. And we did. And it's been a great relationship ever since. So that was the beginning of the change. And now I had making a name for myself. But again, barbecue has come a long way since then in the public eye, I always remember I got sent to the pork board. Nobody else was in the business of trying to be a barbecue spokesman. Mm-hmm. The pork board sent me to do a thing with Sodexo Mary, the big catering kitchen people in Baltimore. And the guys there just kind of were looking at the barbecue guy like, oh gosh, he's not a real chef. He's a barbecue guy. What could he possibly know that we don't? And I saw this a lot over the years. It's changed completely now. Now they want me to come. The chefs all want to know what I know because they realize we do something different. But anyway, so the Green Egg thing started, and that helped. And now I had a bit of a career going. It wasn't a full salary, but it was a start. So I started pushing myself out there. A buddy of mine, Bruce Ring, up in Iowa, had started the BBQer magazine. And so I called Bruce and I said, hey, I want to write the Ask Dr. Barbecue column. And he said, well, okay. Basically I'll pay you when I can. And so he paid me the first year. Second year was a little tight. I think the third year he bought me my first chef coats that had the flames on the collar and cuffs. So I always remember Bruce for that. I still got him around here somewhere. It was fun. We had to make up the questions most of the times with that magazine, but that was okay. And so Bruce decided he's going to fold the magazine, and he actually moved to Jeffersonville, Missouri, and bought the Zesto Freeze that he had worked at as a kid. That's a whole other story, but I got a million of them. But so Bruce said, I'm folding up the magazine, that's it, I'm out. And so I figured, okay, well, I got to do something different. And a friend of mine said, well, call Dave DeWitt. He's got Fiery Foods magazine, and he might be willing to have you in there. So I called Dave, and he said, yeah, I've been thinking about putting some more barbecue content into my Fiery Foods magazine. That sounds good. I'll give you whatever, $200 a month, whatever it was. It was more than I'd been getting from Bruce. So I said, yeah, that sounds about right, So little by little, Dave, Dave from fiery-foods.com. He runs the Fiery Food Show in Albuquerque and the Scobie Awards and stuff. He ended up becoming a great mentor to me. Writing for the magazine worked out, actually, and Dave was real active online. It was kind of new to be online so much, but little by little, we got a lot of questions. We didn't have to make them up so much anymore. We were getting good questions, and Dave would keep them cataloged on his website. I think it's all still there. And so now I was really kind of making a move in the right direction. I was kind of getting known, and as the internet was coming alive, I was real active on the barbecue forum. Ray Battlow's forum in the early days was the place to hang out, and really still is. There's a whole lot of guys that still look at it. It's not as active as it used to be, but pretty amazing. Ray was a big proponent of promoting barbecue along the way, and a lot of us found each other there, like so many places on the internet. You got all these people into some goofy hobby, and we all found each other. And Ray's forum deserves a lot of credit for people getting together. And then Dave DeWitt called me one day and said, hey, I've heard about this project to write a barbecue cookbook, and they called me, but I can't really do it, but I think you're perfect for it. And I said, well, heck, I'm sitting in a parking lot in Florida selling barbecue. Of course I'm interested in a book deal, So Dave hooked me up with the agent and the whole deal and the whole project, and that's my first book, Dr. Barbecue's Big Time Barbecue Cookbook. And that was Dave really handed me that deal, became a good friend because of it. Mm-hmm. But when I got done, they all said, you know what, this guy's pretty good at writing cookbooks. Maybe we ought to have him write some more. And so then they signed me to do 2 more, and it just went from there. I got to write the NFL cookbook, and now I just turned in my 3rd book for Chronicle Books, and we're talking about a 4th one. I'm up to the 7th book will be out next fall, and the 8th one is in the works now. So I guess I turned into a real cookbook author along the way.
I guess I'll jump in and ask any hints on what the upcoming books will be about.
I think I could talk about the one that'll be out next year. It's called it's about cooking pork chops.
Oh, okay.
I'm not exactly sure of the title yet, but it's about cooking pork chops, which is certainly a subject that I enjoy. So now let's talk about TV.
Okay.
John Marcus. Okay. How does this story start? And this is secondhand info, but it's basically they're all friends of mine. John Marcus is a friend of Al Franken's. Al Franken, very liberal, before he was a senator, doing a radio show, and he wants to go do his radio show in the bastions of Republicanness in the South, barbecue joints. So one of the places they choose to go is Big Bob Gibson's Barbecue in Decatur, Alabama. There's a side story to that they were signed up to go to Myron Mixon's restaurant in Vienna, Georgia, and Myron had to call him and say that he had to change his mind because his family wasn't too happy he was going to let Al Franken come to his restaurant. Now, Myron would have to fill in the details of that story, but it's something like that, and if you know about it, pretty believable, pretty funny story. Anyway, Chris Lilly seizes the opportunity to approach John Marcus about doing a barbecue show, and that was the names are all kind of similar. Whatever that first one was, the one where we went around to different places, and the culmination was in New York City. They had me cooking briskets against Myron in Corpus Christi, Texas. I can't think of the name. The All-Star Barbecue Challenge or something like that. It's the first year of any of this. Mm-hmm. And They had me. We were in Memphis. I cooked against Hayward, cooked some turkeys. They had Fast Eddie building his own block pit somewhere, cooking against Terry Black. And there was a series of these around the country, and then the finale was in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
It was a pretty big deal for us back then. It was on Versus. It was it wasn't a big channel, but it was a pretty big deal. None of us have ever really been on TV like with our own show. And I mean, that John Marcus started it all. And then the following year, we did the one in Reno. It had a similar name. I should have wrote all these names down, but it's all kind of the same thing. But it's
I remember that. I can't remember the name of it either. I think that's the first one I caught.
Both of those are available on DVD. The one in Reno, they had set up a big set for us, which for all of us, that was new. We'd never seen anything like that. It was a big TV production. And they did it there, and that's where we were cooking the fish and the eels and all of that stuff. And it was a lot of fun, but I don't know how that one did. It kind of went on hiatus for a while after that. And then it came back as Barbecue Pitmasters, and I just haven't been able to get involved in Barbecue Pitmasters. I wish them all the luck. It's just not a good fit for me anymore. But it was great. It was a great start, and John's still a good friend, and I wish him all the best of luck. I really love seeing it as it is. At the same time, now, I started becoming known as the barbecue guy who could actually walk and talk on air and had the silly beard and silly haircut, which, by the way, is the Chicago truck driver look. This is exactly what I looked like.
I was thinking about asking you that. Where did you develop that? But a lot of truck drivers up there have that?
Well, now it's just kind of, if you look a little bit scary, driving in the city and some of the neighborhoods and stuff, it's probably a good thing for you. So a buddy of mine got a flat top, and I thought, man, that looks comfortable. About that time in my life, I was ready to get rid of long hair, and so I went and got a flat top, and I always had a goatee, so I started letting it grow and just kind of evolved into the look. But it evolved nicely. It just switched over nicely from being a truck driver look to the barbecue man look. All I had to do was get a new shirt, basically, and that was it.
I guess it was better than getting tattoos all over your face, and then
yeah, but
worry about getting those off.
So anyway, that was then I got to, along the way, I befriended Guy Fieri, and before he was famous, so when he got famous, he lent me a few hands. I mean, the guy had me on Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives. The Tailgate Warriors show I was on because of Guy. He was my friend, and he said they're going to do a tailgating show. He's like, we'll get Ray to be up here a judge with me, and that's been a big plus. And along the way, I had an agent in New York for a little while. He got me on Best Thing I Ever Ate. So little by little, all them Food Network people kind of got to know me. They haven't given me my own show yet, but they seem to like me, and they kind of put me on their show now and then. And it just, one step at a time. I remember this talking to, I skipped Maxim Magazine. Maxim Magazine called Fast Eddie out of the blue one day and said they wanted to learn how to cook whole hog. I think that was in 2002. And so me and Eddie and Chris Lilly went to New York and taught these guys how to cook hogs 3 ways. But it was Maxim Magazine, so they had a big bikini model photo shoot to go along with it. And that was our first real national publicity. You got me and Chris and Eddie in Maxim Magazine with these hogs and these bikini models. And, so it's little by little is what it is. And Todd from Plowboys called me one day, and they were going to get, their stuff was going to be in some magazine. And I told him, I said, that's a great thing. I said, but I wouldn't restock the warehouse just because of that. It's the cumulative of all this stuff that gets you to be well known, your product or your person. Mm-hmm. It's all the little bits of it. It all adds up at the end of the day. And now, when someone calls, well, if you Google me online, you find a whole lot of stuff that I've done, and it's all cumulative. Is any one of it any better than the other? Oh, I don't know. Is one book better than none? Sure. But is 8, now when you write 8, now you're really an author. So it's all the little stuff, man. Just a little, keep plugging away, and there's no doubt I have that entrepreneurial gene. I think I'm probably a better businessman than I am a cookbook author. And, I told him that when I signed up. I said, I can handle the business of it. I'm not sure I can write cookbooks, but it turned out I could. So it's just all that little stuff, and just kind of, when you get to a fork in the road, you hope you make the right choice. And I've done it. Luckily, I've made some good choices.
We're going to take a little break right now, but we'll return for the second half of this interview right after these messages.
Blood, a dark passenger, the binding ties of clear plastic, They're not just hallmarks of the hit Showtime television program, Dexter. They're bullet points talked about each week on the Dexter podcast from Two Guys Talking. Don't miss out on killer dialogue that leaves you with a bloodlust for more. It's the Two Guys Talking Dexter podcast for Dexter fans. Find out more now at twoguystalking.com. That's the number 2guystalking.com.
Do you consider yourself to be a chilihead and want to find some hot new gear to wear?
Oh, yeah.
Look no further than chileheadtees.com. If you're a heat freak and love hot sauce, chili peppers, or anything dealing with fiery and spicy foods, this is the place to get t-shirts to show off your obsession. Chilihead Tees is dedicated to giving you the hottest t-shirts, mouse pads, mugs, aprons, and more for the discriminating chilihead. Go to chileheadtees.com. That's chileheadstees.com.
You're listening to a podcast appearing on the Two Guys Talking Podcast Network.
Having a friendly, relatable voice can make all the difference in your marketing efforts. Let Scott Roberts' voiceover be that voice. I can give you the goods, whatever your need is, whether it be for commercials, podcasts, voicemail phone systems and on-hold messages, business presentations, websites, audiobooks, and more. If you require a personable, real, down-to-earth voiceover artist, then look no further. You can find out more at scottrobertsvoice.com.
Two Guys Talking Poker.com. I'm Vic Porcelli, that's one guy. And Big Slick, a.k.a. Andy Kazin, he's the other guy. Hiya.
Hey, that's me.
You know, Andy and I catch some hot hands when we're playing poker. But if you want to talk about hot sauces, chili peppers, any food with real heat, it's Scott Roberts and the Weekly Firecast on the Two Guys Talking Podcast Network.
And we are back, and here's the second half of the interview. As far as the TV appearances, your most recent one was on Chopped Grill Masters, correct?
Yeah, sure was.
And what was the experience behind doing that one?
Oh, it was a blast. Gosh, that was fun. I think it comes from knowing all these folks. The girl that did the casting, I actually knew her from a different project, and she called me and said, would you help me with this? I need a list of grilling guys. And I said, yeah, sure. I said, can I judge? And she said, let me find out. Called me back, said, no, they're going to use the regular chopped judges. I said, okay. Then put me first on that list of people that want to cook. And I gave her another 20 names or so of friends and stuff. And then so I got picked and I got to go, and we had a blast doing it. But I'll tell you, I did not know anybody else that was going to be on the show till I got there. And really, they did not ever put us all in the same room together. But we were all at the same hotel. So, but frankly, I won on Monday, so I got to stay. It was Monday through Friday that we shot it all. Mm-hmm. I got to stay. So the three people I had cooked against, I saw them that day, and they were gone. But then I'd be sitting in the lobby, and I'd see somebody walk by that I knew and think, oh, okay, I guess he's in. I saw Rick Brown carrying a little cooler going to the kitchen one day. I said, I guess Rick's cooking. And who else did I see? Oh, Corinne Trang is an old friend of mine. She hinted about it on Facebook, and I was trying to hide. And then she figured out I was there. And so little by little, a bunch of us got to know each other. But frankly, like the people that cooked on Tuesday, they were gone Wednesday morning. So it was very weird, that whole angle of it. But the cooking was fun. I mean, it's real. There's no BSing involved. No, I was thinking they'd tip us off what was going to be in them baskets. Not at all, man. Nothing. The only one I had a hint of was I could smell the fish when I was standing in front of it. But I didn't know what kind of fish it was. I watched the show, 1,000 times before to try to somehow prepare yourself for it. So I went and bought a new big badass fillet knife, knowing full well there might be a fish in there. And so that helped me. I had a good fillet knife when it came time to fillet that thing. But other than that, man, you don't know what's in there, and the time is brutal. I mean, you open a basket, he names the 4 ingredients, and they start the clock. It's wild.
Just like all those kind of shows, yeah. Totally different than, competition barbecue, where you are pretty much in control. Of course, there are specific turn-in times, but there's just a lot of waiting, sitting around doing nothing. How do you find yourself dealing with that when you just have a specific amount of time, 20 minutes or 30 minutes, to get a bunch of stuff done? Do you work well under pressure?
Yeah, the 30 seemed like an eternity after 20. It's 20 for the app and then 30 for entree and 30 for dessert. 30 seemed like an eternity after the 20. No, it's nothing like competition barbecue and those folks, Tommy and I forgot his wife's name, that cooked in the round with me, were very much competition cooks, and they just didn't really. They were in trouble there because it had nothing to do with competition barbecue at all. It's instinct, really. You try to prepare yourself. I sort of went in with a bit of an idea of what I might like to do. I thought I would maybe make a salsa of some sort and grill a bunch of vegetables, and I thought a hash would be a good thing because you got to figure out how to incorporate these goofy ingredients, especially in grilling. And I wanted to make those tortillas, those tacos at the end, or quesadillas, I should say. And I was hoping to get the right ingredients. Luckily, I got the moon pie, and it worked out good. But you just don't know. You might have to change on the fly. To me, you go in with a bit of a plan, but you can't be too married to it because then you might try and force something. And then you just got to count on your instincts. You just hope it's a split-second decision what you're going to do, and you hope you make a good decision. I don't know. There's no way to prepare for it. I tried a little bit, and I think it was Rick Brown said he had 60 episodes on his phone so he could watch them constantly. I think that was Rick that said that. Somebody did. I mean, but there's no way to prepare for it. You just gotta, over the last 10 years, I've been lucky enough to go and cook a lot of different things besides just barbecue in the contest world. And I've learned a lot from other chefs, and I've been accepted as a chef, and I've sort of taught myself how to cook a lot of different things, and that served me well. Ernest, who won the thing, is a chef. He's a barbecue guy too, but he's a chef. And Sam Choi, obviously an old, experienced chef. These are the guys that were there. So it made me feel good that I've become a chef in that regard because I was able to shoot from the hip because there's no way to prepare for it, man. Other than buying a fillet knife, that's what it's like. They let you bring 7 knives from home. No, all knives. You can't bring a melon baller. You can't bring a sharpener. You can't bring a rasp. You got to bring knives, up to 7 of them. And they take them away and they bring them back. And when you come up, you say, they say, are those your knives on the table? And they are. Mm-hmm. So this plan, I had 2 chef's knives, 2 big chef's knives. I had my fillet knife. I had a paring knife. I had a boning knife. I had an old high carbon steel knife that was my grandma's that I actually still like and use. I had that. And so I got this plan. Well, when the time starts, you're just flying by the seat of your pants and you grab whatever knife is laying there. Oh my God. It's you can't describe it when the time is on. I mean, the first probably 10, 15 seconds of the first round, I was just kind of stuck. I was just like, oh my God, what do I do? And it scared me. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be embarrassed myself here if I don't do something. And I improve and execute pretty well, but I can't say anything except instinct, really.
Well, kind of speaking of that, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about cooking. Obviously, we're in the thick of football season right now, so tailgating is big. What tips would you give people, especially if they're new to tailgating and grilling like that, to make it a better overall experience?
It's funny. I get interviewed so much, and I talk to so many people, and we haven't even talked about cooking yet. I guess that's a compliment to where my career has gone, but I don't have to cook that much anymore. I do a lot more talking about cooking than I do cooking. Tailgating to me is we went out of our way to go pitch the NFL to write the NFL cookbook, and I was glad I did because I felt strongly about it. Guys they're too basic in what they do. Guys know how to cook. They cook all kinds of interesting things at home. But then when they go to the tailgate, all they want to cook is bratwurst and burgers, or they go buy some expensive steaks or lobsters or something. And it's just not that simple. I think it's more fun to see interesting stuff, and it doesn't take that much to go out of the box a little bit. I mean, one of the things I used to make scalloped potatoes. I'd make them in the morning at home, cover them up, and take them to the game. Well, they were still warm when we got there. They were fine. They were ready to go, and everybody enjoyed that instead of just potato chips. A lasagna. I made a great recipe for it's actually a baked ziti with salami and little meatballs in it. And you get that warm at home and carry it to the game, and it's fine. And people love something like that on a cold day. Or marinating stuff. Don't marinate it ahead of time and have it ready to go when you get there. I really feel it's important that when you take on the job of being the tailgating guy that day, don't jack around. Guys are coming and girls expecting you to cook something good for them. If you don't want to do it, don't do it. And nothing used to bug me more. I used to tailgated at Soldier Field for years. And we would take turns. So it would be one or two people, depending on what you were doing. It'd be their turn to cook for the week. And then the rest of the year, you just showed up, which was actually kind of nice. But some of these guys just wouldn't do that much when it was their turn. Or they'd go buy pre-made stuff. And it's like, that made me mad. It was like, come on, you only got to do it once a year. Do something extra. Make the effort. Guys are expecting it. They go for it. One of the things I always tell people is have something to put out early. Because when you get there, you drive down to the game, guys are hungry, and they're just going to bug you and want you to rush everything. Put out a cheese plate or something, or something warm. Bring a pot of soup, warm it up at home, or bring your Coleman stove and just get it warm and serve them some of that right away. Cookies or desserts or muffins. I used to have this great little pan, I still got it, that makes helmet-shaped cupcakes. And for the Bears, I would just smear them with blue and put a little orange C on there. And it worked great. It was a good solution. And especially the girls, my buddy Scott in Chicago, his wife, Maureen, she still talks about that because that made her day. When she got there, she wanted something sweet. She's a, kind of a sugar junkie, so she got a cupcake and she was happy. So I always try to put a lot of different things out and get something out there. And then you can take your time if you're cooking steak sandwiches or marinating some chicken breasts or something. You can take your time getting that ready properly.
Do you have any particular favorite recipes people could just easily cook while they're tailgating? Like a favorite side, a favorite dessert that would just wow everybody?
Well, I always think about, stuff that guys can eat in their hands. One of the things I like to do is a marinated steak sandwich. Get some thin ribeye steak sandwiches and marinate them. Whatever. If you want to buy the stuff out of the bottle, go ahead. I'd rather you didn't. I'd rather you put a little bit of soy sauce, a little bit of garlic, maybe a little orange juice, some olive oil, some onions in there, and maybe a couple of jalapenos, and throw it all in a bag and let it soak overnight. How about Coke? I always heard the story about how if you put a steak in Coca-Cola, it'll disintegrate. Well, I figured I'd try that one day, but I happened to be drinking a Jack Daniels and Coke, so I poured the Coke in the bag with the steaks and a little bit of Jack, and in the morning the steaks were still there. They just tasted good. So that's a fun one, actually, Jack and Coke steak sandwiches. And then you get these quarter-inch ribeyes, and you bring them there. Bring some buns and some grill the onions at home, and bang, you cook these steak sandwiches. They're just a few minutes, and it's really something special then. Put it on the bun with the grilled onions, and somebody's getting really something special, and it's about as easy as cooking some hamburgers that nobody cares about.
Well, very cool. I guess when it comes to anything related to grilling or smoking, do you have one single favorite meat? It could be anything. Steaks, sausages, pork shoulder, ribs. What would it be?
If we're going in the kitchen, it's very different. If we're cooking on the grill, it's probably, I like to cook pork chops for myself, but for other people, I cook ribs because people just are so passionate about ribs and they really care about it, and they're just blown away when you cook some good ones for them. So that's what I like to cook for other people. For me, a simple grilled pork chop I love. But if we're in the kitchen, my all-time favorite meal, if I'm going to the electric chair tomorrow, I'm making braised lamb shanks today. It's something my grandma used to make for me, and to this day, it's my favorite meal. You just kind of brown them lamb shanks and with a bunch of onion and garlic and a lot of salt. And then she would throw in some tomato sauce so that the gravy would sort of become this tomatoey, garlicky gravy, and braise them till the lamb shanks are all tender, and serve them with some pasta and that gravy. And to me, that's, if I'm going electric chair, that's the meal I'm having.
Actually sounds really good. I guess it's because it's getting close to lunchtime right now.
It could be, yeah.
You mentioned, of course, that you wrote for Fiery Foods magazine a number of years back. Do you consider yourself to be a big chili head and hot sauce fanatic?
I'm a chili head, but I don't like hot. A little bit. I mean, for me, I like jalapenos and serranos. Anything hotter than that, I just don't much care about. The hot sauces, it's weird. I'm a cookbook author, so I don't use a lot of products like that. Just because it's weird to take some sort of obscure or not very well-known product and use that in a recipe, and it's not fair. Sandy, my fiance, uses Mrs. Dog's Disappearing Mustard. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but she always wants to use that in the recipes, and I'm like, well, we can't, though. It's kind of you can't put that into cookbook, really. So I'll use Crystal around the house and Frank's Red Hot and the basic generic hot sauces, but I'm not a hot sauce freak. However, I am a chili head. I do like when fresh chilies are in, green chilies. I love those things, use them a lot. I use good quality ground chilies all the time. I recommend that. I've said it 1,000 times when I'm teaching a class or something. I try to use everything that I could buy at the grocery store because I think that's only fair to people, not to use crazy obscure ingredients, with the exception of chili powder or ground chilies. The stuff in the stores is just crap, and I hate to see people use it because it's not going to make your recipe taste like mine at all. So I've got a favorite because I have been a competition chili cook over the years as well, and I judged Interlingual one time, and I've been qualified a few different times. I used to cook some ICS as well. I used to use San Antonio Red from Penderies, not Penzies, Penderies in Fort Worth. I'm sure you know who they are. Mm-hmm. That's what I recommend to a lot of people. It's a good middle of the road. Oh, it's a chili powder. There's some other stuff in there besides chilies, but I think for most people it's a great place to start, and I love that stuff. But if you looked in my cabinet, there's ground chipotle and ground ancho, and what else is in there these days? No telling. But I consider myself a chili head, and really I use ground chilies a lot, or chili powder, in my recipes because I think it's a great ingredient. It gives great color, great flavor, but not the heat. Right? Did I answer that properly?
I think you did.
However, I've been to the Fiery Food Show in Albuquerque many times, and I will be back this year. I think it's the 25th anniversary, and I've seen about anything you could imagine. The guy next to me used to sell chocolate-covered habaneros when they were first coming around. He would buy them, and he'd dip them in chocolate and sell them for $1. And the people didn't really know that much about them, and they would buy these things. Of course, they're all chili heads, too. They'd buy them and eat them, and they were dying. And then I think it was Cajun. The first year he came out with that clear hot sauce.
Oh, the frostbite.
Yeah, right. It looked like water. And we were right down the line from him, and everybody coming by was just lit up from that stuff. So I certainly know all about it, but it's not my thing to eat that stuff.
Now, when it comes to ribs, are you a dry rub or a wet rib kind of guy?
I'm a dry rub guy. I just was in Kansas City. I bought a 16-ounce bottle of Gates barbecue sauce. That'll last me the whole year. That's about how much barbecue sauce I will personally eat in the year. And then I'll share that with Sandy, and it'll be half full next year when I get a new one. I just don't much care for barbecue sauce. I love smoked meat. I love spices on the smoked meat. Barbecue sauce for me is just not something I care for.
Not even a little bit on the side. Myself, I prefer things to be dry and seasoned. But when I eat meat, I might dip a little bit in the sauce just for flavor, moisture.
I'll eat about 8 ounces in a year. So I occasionally will do that. But I'll eat half of that barbecue bottle sauce in a year. That's about it. Once in a great while. I'm not much of a condiment guy at all. When I go to McDonald's, I order plain cheeseburgers. That's how I like them. I'm not much of a condiment guy. Anytime I go to a restaurant, I'll have the sauce on the side. I may dip a little bit, even if it's not a barbecue restaurant. If I go to the fish restaurant, I want it on the side. And I'm just not much of a condiment guy at all, let alone barbecue sauce. So, not much. No. Once in a great while, I get a taste for it. And then, of course, when you're developing recipes, you have to, because most people are not like that. Most people do like barbecue sauce. For me, not very much.
Now, when cooking barbecue, do you ever cook regional styles based on where you're located at the time? Or do you pretty much stick with like your own Dr. Barbecue flavor profile, so to speak?
Well, it's a loaded question. I have very serious thoughts about this whole regional thing. I wrote a book called Barbecue Road Trip 5-6 years ago, and what I learned was that these regional things that are regurgitated aren't always true. Actually, Dave DeWitt and I went to North Carolina for an epic week eating in barbecue restaurants, because I'd spent a lot of time in Kansas City and some in Texas and Memphis, but not so much in North Carolina. So I needed to go there and really do my homework. And so Dave came with me, and we spent a week there. And we were eating in 4 barbecue restaurants a day. Dave's kind of skinny. He was having a hard time keeping up, but I was doing okay. But what we found was it wasn't always as you read and hear about. In North Carolina, I had heard of the pulled pork sandwiches with the slaws on there, and I was led to believe the slaws would be something interesting, and that the vinegar sauce would be hot and spicy, and there was the story of the one side of the state where they cook whole hogs so that they can chop up all the meat and mix it together, and that way you will get the full representation of the hog, and so on and so on. So when we were there, we found that we were at the Skylight Inn, one of the most famous places you can go that cooks the whole hog. And the guy carried a leg in from the cooker house and put it on the counter and chopped it up and pushed it out to be served. Well, I didn't get any shoulder or loin in that pile or any belly. And, it just was like, well, wait a minute. That's not what I heard. We ate in 25 restaurants, and we didn't eat one thing that was considered spicy by any stretch. And I'm not chili. I'm not a fire eater. Dave is, but although Dave's not really a fire eater either. But we had nothing that was spicy. The coleslaw was just generic slaw, chopped up cabbage with a little vinegar and sugar everywhere we went. There was nothing interesting about it at all. It was good. It was what the people liked. There was no misunderstanding there. It was chopped to death, too. That was the interesting part. I thought it would be shredded, pulled. Not at all. It's chopped to death. Have you ever been there and eaten that stuff?
Yeah, and I'm not a big fan of the chopped. I think it dries out quicker. I prefer to be as close to the whole form, a solid pork shoulder, as it can be. Just, take off a little bit, so you can put some on a sandwich, and that's about it.
Yeah, and see, that's just not what we saw there. And it surprised me, and it disappointed me. I mean, I think I wrote that, I don't know how to say this to you, but North Carolina, and it really wasn't very smoky at all. Nothing was. They burned wood. We went to all the places that still burned wood. We didn't go to, there's a new electric style smoker that emulates the way they cook. But that's not where we went. But they burn all the wood down to coals before they throw it under the hog, so there's no flavor left. Basically, I said, I hate to say this, but North Carolina barbecue is all about the sauce, which was as weird as you could think. But anyway, what I found was if you read, they just rewrite the North Carolina barbecue, pulled, spicy, vinegary, whole hog, slaw. Well, it was kind of bullshit, and what I don't blame the people. That's what they like to eat. That's fine. But the people there's a lot of people writing about it that apparently never went there. And that bugs me. In Memphis, when you go to Memphis, this big story, wet ribs and dry ribs. Well, you know what? That's bullshit too. That's a tourist thing started by the Rendezvous. And God bless them, man. They're making a bunch of money. And I like dry rub ribs. Don't misunderstand. But when you go to the barbecue shop and talk to that old dude there, he's got them on the menu like that, but he doesn't care about that. He's got them on the menu because that's what people ask for. It's not really, to me, it's not the story in Memphis. Well, let's go back to North Carolina. Everywhere I went, they had these really cool hush puppies, these little log-shaped hush puppies that were great. I've never even heard of those. And they got them in every barbecue restaurant in North Carolina. In Memphis, it's very much about pulled pork. That's where you'll get the big long strings of pork in Memphis. Or you can get it chopped too, but you might get the shreds. You'll also get slaw on your sandwich in Memphis, which I thought that was a North Carolina thing. But then there's a thing in almost every barbecue restaurant in Memphis called barbecue spaghetti. And nobody ever talks about that. That's a way more interesting subject. These guys are into it, too. They all make it different, and it's an important dish in Memphis. But everybody's caught up talking about the same old wet rib, dry rib nonsense. I'm from Chicago. I do not eat deep dish pizza. You're from St. Louis. You ever go to Chicago and you don't eat that deep dish pizza? It's tourist pizza. We eat same thin crust pizza as you guys do in St. Louis, in the neighborhoods and the people that live there. Once a year we'd go down to Uno's and get a deep dish pizza for a date night or something. But we didn't eat that stuff, and it just bugs me that these regional stuff, white barbecue sauce. Oh my God, you'd believe everybody in Alabama puts white barbecue sauce on their ribs. That's not true at all, but that's the regional belief. So I have a big problem with all this regional stuff. Texas, you go to Texas and they don't have barbecue sauce in the barbecue restaurants. Bullshit. Yes, they do. It depends which one you go to. There's two that don't. If you go to Crisis and Smitty's, they don't have barbecue sauce. If you go to Black's on the other side of the square, they got a crock pot full of barbecue sauce. So the regional thing just really crawls at me because it's so regurgitated and it's nonsense. It's not true. There are regional things going on out there. There's no doubt about it, but it's not 4 different regions where everybody does it the same way. So do I cook like that? Yeah, sometimes I do, but you may not recognize what I cooked because if I made barbecued spaghetti, you may not know where that was from if you didn't really do your homework. You know what I mean? So that's what I probably am more in tune to Kansas City barbecue because I spent a lot of time there and cut my teeth there. But I've learned how to cook a lot of different places. So I like to think that I'm pretty well-rounded, but you know, a lot of it is similar. Kansas City, let's talk about that. What does everybody think Kansas City barbecue is about? Sweet, gooey, molasses-based sauce, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Where? I mean, I go to Gates, it's not like that at all. I go to Arthur Bryant's, it's not like that at all. Oklahoma Joe's is really not like that. I'd say they're more like head country sauce. I don't know, you know, in Mr. Davis, Dr. Davis, who's actually at the Hall of Fame ceremony, the guy that invented Casey Masterpiece, he had some restaurants for a while, but they're all gone. I just think because that stuff's on the shelf in every store called Kansas City Barbecue, you know, Kansas City Masterpiece, everybody thinks that's what they eat all over there, and I just don't see it when I go there.
Yeah, well, it's not, you know, cut and dry. I think it's just more an overall, I guess, influence. And, of course, everybody has their own little variations. But I guess going back to the original question, when you cook, is it your own little style, or do you ever try to, I don't want to say experiment, but do you try different styles, not necessarily regional, but just different flavor profiles to kind of please the audience that you're trying to cook for?
What a surprise. I got off track, huh? On that rant, but it's something that really bugs me because I just saw an article recently about the regions of barbecue, and it was all quotes from people in New York City. Some New York writer had written it and went down the street to Southern Hospitality to interview the guy that spent his whole life in New York to find out about Memphis barbecue, and Elizabeth Carmel about Texas barbecue, and it bugs me. So sorry.
Oh, that's quite all right.
But yeah, I think like anything, the more you learn, the more it helps you when you want to be creative. Obviously, I write cookbooks for a living, so I have to find new things, new flavors. One of the things that I use a lot, and it fits into the chilehead thing too, is chipotles. You know, chipotles is something we didn't really think about 10 years ago, and now I use them a lot. I'm going to a food and wine festival in Des Moines, and I'm going to make these ribs with orange chipotle barbecue sauce.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't really fit any region, but it's certainly good stuff. So I think that the regions have influenced me probably, but yeah, it's definitely about being creative at this point in my life because that's what I have to do. I'll often say it to Sandy when I'm making dinner, and she kind of, you know, stubs her nose at what I cooked, and I'm like, well, I'm not trying to cook dinner, a really kick-ass dinner. I'm just trying to create a new recipe, something different for folks. So yeah, I do a lot of that, and certainly, you know, the background knowledge of having gone and eaten at all these places helps me a lot. But you don't want to get caught up on that either. You don't want to get caught up that I'm trying to recreate North Carolina barbecue, because I'm not. I wouldn't be, and it's just such a generic term. So yeah, when I'm cooking, anything's on the table. If I'm cooking just for myself at home, oh gosh, I'll just grab some salt, pepper, a little bit of chili powder, a little bit of garlic powder on some ribs, and if they're a little chewy, I'm good with that. I think that's just fine. Probably when I'm cooking at home for myself, plainer than anything, and when I'm creating recipes, then you want to be as creative as possible.
And kind of on the same subject of flavor profiles, you have a new iPhone app called Ribs, and in it basically has the building blocks of, I think, 4 or 5 different rub recipes, 4 or 5 different sauce recipes, and then you have rib recipes that use those building block sauces and rubs. Why don't you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, there's 5 rib recipes, but 4 each of the rubs and sauces, because I got something called old school spare ribs that we would just use salt and pepper on, so we didn't have a rub for them. And then there's dry rubbed ribs that didn't need a barbecue sauce, so that's why there's the odd number. But certainly you could mix and match all of that stuff. It was fun. I met some guys that build apps for a living, and we were talking about it, and I said, well, heck, I could certainly do the content. It'd be interesting to see. And they looked around, and there really wasn't anything about ribs out there, which was surprising. So we put it together. It was a lot of fun. I'm having fun with it for sure. I've gotten some notes back from folks that are cooking using it. And it's really pretty cool. All you got to do is go to the App Store and just look for ribs and search ribs, and it'll pop right up. And I think it's available for Android now, too.
Oh, very cool.
And it's only 99 cents.
Exactly. I mean, that's a bargain. It's almost free.
Right.
Before we wrap this up, I want to ask you about some of the future plans that you have. You mentioned a couple books. Also coming up in November are the World Food Championships.
Yeah, well, the book thing sort of ongoing. It's one of them things that you can't get into the business unless you can't get a cookbook deal unless you already have a cookbook deal. And luckily, I have a cookbook deal in my background, so they keep they trust me. They know I'll show up. It's like a lot of life, You turn everything in on time in a reasonably good fashion. You pretty much do what you promised you were going to do, and they keep you around. So the cookbook thing is ongoing. I'm proud of that. The World Food Championship, I'm really excited about this. Tribe Targeting is the company out of Nashville that is putting this together with Adam Richman, and I've been doing some work with them, done some projects with them, and I'm looking forward to this. They've secured me to come out there and be part of it. They haven't decided yet what they're going to do with me, but my flight's booked, so I know I'm going and I'll be there doing something. I think they know they can trust me, so they're going to plug me in where they need me at the end. But it looks like a blast. I mean, the quick synopsis of it, it's we're going to take a big barbecue cook-off, a big chili cook-off, a burger cook-off, side dish thing. There's a chef's choice. There's 7 criteria total, and the winners will all be seated at the final table on Sunday, and a champion will be chosen out of the 7. So the final judging will be a plate of barbecue, a bowl of chili, a side dish, a sandwich, a burger, a chef's creation, and I'm missing something, whatever the 7th one is. But whatever. But it's a really cool idea, I think, and they're doing it at Las Vegas between Bally's and Paris, and oh gosh, it's going to be fun. They got a bunch of celebrities coming. I know Adam Richman's coming. I know Nadia G is coming. I've not met her. I'm looking forward to meeting her.
The Bitchin' Kitchen, yeah.
Yeah, I saw Mark Murphy on the list, who I don't know Mark, and I saw him. He judged me on Chopped and said a lot of nice things about me, and then we didn't get a chance to visit afterwards. So looking forward to seeing Mark and a whole bunch of other people. I mean, I think it's going to be a big deal. I'm really looking forward to it.
And this is November 1st through 4th, I believe, correct?
Yeah, it starts, I think, on Thursday. The events start. And they're going to have like some cool public events as well, like the burger bash kind of a thing, and there's a couple of barbecue events where you'll get to eat. I got a feeling I'm going to get sucked into cooking some barbecue, but that's okay. I like to cook barbecue, and I don't get to do it too much. So there are going to be a bunch of events leading up to it, and the barbecue cook-off will be there, the chili cook-off, and all this stuff will lead up to the final table on Sunday. So it's going to be a big weekend of fun. I give these guys a lot of credit. They have gone out on a limb to put this together. It's new. It's groundbreaking. Nobody's done this before, and it's coming together nice, and it's going to be fun to see it develop.
Very cool. I wish I could make it this year. Fortunately, I won't be able to.
All right, well, next year. We'll pencil you in for next year for sure.
Sounds good. Is there any other things you want to plug or promote?
Oh, I don't know. It's all kind of my life. Just look at my website or catch me on Facebook. I'm on Twitter a lot at DRBBQ, and Facebook, mostly under my name, Ray Lampe, on Facebook. But there's a Dr. Barbecue page, too. I'm real active out there. So if you're curious what I'm doing, that's a good place to find me.
And as always, I put all the links in the show notes. So, well, anyway, Ray, thank you very much for taking out a bunch of your time today and talking.
Yeah, I was awful long-winded today. That's my story. It's kind of fun to talk about. I'm getting to, there's still a long way to go, but I'm proud of where I've gotten, and it's a lot of fun. And, people like to hear the story. I'm happy to tell it.
Well, again, thank you very much, and I will talk to you soon.
Good talking to you. Take care.
And I certainly appreciate Ray talking with me. He's one of my favorite guys in the whole world of barbecue. To find out more information about him, just go to drbbq.com. And again, if you're interested in finding out more of the sauces that I reviewed, Evil Seed sauces, you can go to evilseedsauces.com. And as always, I will put the links in the show notes, which are available at weeklyfirecast.com or twoguystalking.com/firecast. Just look for episode 10, and you'll find the important links mentioned in this episode right there in that entry. I won't keep you any longer here. Thanks everyone for listening. Spread the word if you love the show. And until next time, remember, keep it burning.
This has been the Weekly Firecast. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast via iTunes or at the official website at scottrobertsweb.com/weeklyfirecast. The Weekly Firecast is part of the Two Guys Talking podcast network. For more information on other great Two Guys Talking programming, you can go to twoguystalking.com. That's the number 2, guystalking.com. Thanks for listening. And remember, keep it burning.